Well, it is great to meet you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. So you had said you wanted to talk about your experiences with energies and how you can use your heart and body to become more sensitive to the things around you. Absolutely. I talk to my clients and my students about awareness all the time and how that's really the inner work that I have done. The awareness of things around me has really, really amplified significantly. And it's almost like you don't realize it until all of a sudden you really realize it, right? And then it's like, oh yeah, I'm noticing all of these things. But I personally still struggle a little bit with what do I do with it, right? It's like, okay, I have the signs and the signals around me. I see that. Like, should I jump on it? Should I, kind of wait to see if anything else comes through? So it's interesting what comes up, and then it's like, okay, I see this, but I don't know what to do with that. But I feel like I should do something with it, right? I just I just don't know what it is. So yeah, I think that's something really great to talk to people about. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's my life's passion, right? Yeah, I live and breathe this whole sort of exercise of becoming more intuitive and being more in tune with my heart energy, with my body as well. Obviously, it's work in progress because the more you discover, the more you want to discover, and then the more you discover, the more you uncover.
Mhm.
So it's constantly flowing, constantly changing. But that is the beauty of it, because personally, my biggest transformation has been when everything started making sense and falling into place a few years ago. And at that point, I stopped being on the fast lane of thinking, I need to have everything done, not yesterday, but 10 days ago. Because
Right, right.
the thing about me is that I'm Italian, right? I was born and bred in Italy, raised in Italy. So we want things done yesterday
Mm-hmm.
before everybody else gets there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
So for me, that has been the biggest realization of really understanding that I don't have to rush, and
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason to, because the moment I rush, I put myself back in the space of the mind, back into that fear of not knowing, not seeing, not understanding, not knowing enough, not knowing if it's right or wrong, not knowing if that thing that I'm seeing is really what I'm seeing, or maybe if I'm misunderstanding it into something else. And then obviously comes the bigger question: decisions, choices. Shall I go left? Shall I go right? So the biggest realization for me was really get off the fast lane. There's no need for you to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming to you just when you allow to be in that sense of, oh, okay, stop the world. I just want to get off. And it feels really peaceful inside of me because I don't have to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I will be fed breadcrumbs or morsels, but today is what I need to know, and it's enough. And tomorrow I will know enough. So for me, the biggest realization was really moving into the intuitive space with that inner knowing that it's okay not to have the entire path clear ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay just to have a breadcrumb, a little morsel for you to take a step forward, even to take baby steps, or even not to take a step at all today, but
Mm-hmm.
just becoming aware of that idea that I haven't taken any steps today. I'm still where I was yesterday. But that's good, because I know many people think, oh God, I can't see myself, be doing this in the next 20 years, or the classic, I'm not where I thought I was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
where I saw myself 20 years later. But that is good. That realization in and of itself is excellent, because do you know how many people on this planet don't actually have that realization because they don't work from the space of their heart, their intuition, and their senses? Millions, if not billions.
Mm-hmm.
So for anyone that has any doubts about how they feel and why am I feeling those things, good. That's your baby step towards opening yourself up to a world of different possibilities. And then, of course, the mind is always going to be there engaging you. Am I sensing something that is right? What is this thing that I'm sensing? The mind is always going to be there because the mind wants to be the judge and jury. Right? The mind has ruled our lives for the last 20, 30, 40 years, and it wants to continue to do so. It doesn't want to leave that space for the heart and the senses to really speak to you, and the body to really send you all the signals. But of course, it's a journey, you know, and once you begin to trust that inner knowing that, yeah, okay, I don't know everything, but do I need to know everything? When you develop the inner knowing, then you feel truly at peace with yourself. And you open yourself up to learning new things.
Yeah.
And learning something that you kind of took for granted yesterday, but today is beginning to look so much different as well.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned earlier is just the understanding that the realization is a step in itself, right? That is a step. And that's what I tell people that I work with, you know, in my family. Sometimes it's like, you realized it. That's a step forward, because now that you've realized it, you can do so many other things, and then you can continue to realize other things, right? So that's like, you know, the breadcrumbs that you're given. It's like, okay, here, you're going to realize this, and then what are you going to do with it? Right. Yeah. Beautiful.
Exactly. I mean, it's like I was saying to my mum, right? My mum came and visit here from Italy last month, and I was saying, you know what? You are having these thoughts, this constant, you know, negative programs that you keep on spinning since you were a little girl. Why don't you try 5, 10, 15 minutes of meditation, like I told you so many times? Oh, I tried, but you know what? After a while, I start having all these thoughts, all these images, and I can see adverts from the television or bits of the movies that I watched last night. And I said, that's good. That is being in meditation, because you see them, you don't get carried away by them, right? Because that's what meditation does to you, right? It makes you completely mindful, present, aware, to the point that you don't get carried away with your thoughts, your negative emotions, your images. And then at some point, as we all do, at some point we wake up in meditation and go, oh, okay, that happened again. I've been carried away. And off you go again, back in your body, back to your breath, you know, back to the sensations around the body. So when I told her that, she said, oh, I see. So me realizing that all these messages and these thoughts and emotions pop up is good. And I said, yeah, because it means you're the driver in the car now. You're a conscious driver. You're not just driving aimlessly, you know, where the car takes you. You're actually inputting the destination, and it's good. It feels very empowering, you know. You're not wasting your energies away anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. So many people think, well, I can't meditate because I can't clear my mind. Like, well, that's not necessarily the point. Right. So yeah, explaining that to people is definitely interesting, I can say, because it's like there's so many different opinions on meditation and different ways that you can do it. But yeah, the point isn't necessarily to sit there and think of absolutely nothing at all. I just, that's not really possible. I mean, eventually, if you are, you know, in a state where you are so in tuned and peaceful within yourself, then yeah, maybe you might get there. But usually, yeah, it's just awareness and listening and understanding and working through those things, right? Yeah.
It is, and as you were saying earlier, there are so many different ways, and you know, it's really what works for each and every one of us, right? At the end of the day. But unless you are willing to put yourself in the driver's seat, you know, and that obviously means going deeper into those thoughts, into those images, into those sensations. And that's why people after a while go, oh, no, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. And there is that innate fear, which is understandable, right? Because we all have the same fear. There is that fear of, oh God, my goodness, oh, you're going to put me in my body now? You're going to put me in touch with my body. So my body's going to start sending me signals, which means also memories, images, maybe stuck in your wrist or in your foot or your right knee or your spleen. And the idea that that can happen to some people is even daunting, because they think, oh my goodness, I'm not sure if I want to see that. I'm not prepared to see that. Not realizing that the mere concept of you connecting to your heart energy and to your intuitive body is actually going to put you in a space of calmness, where when you see those messages is because you're ready to see them. Because otherwise your body and your subconscious mind will protect you. They're not going to show you anything that you're not spiritually ready to face and overcome, right? But also, it puts you in a space where you stop judging what is coming up. And you start seeing it as almost like a revelation, which is your aha moment, when you think, oh, look at that. Look at that image from the past that I thought so little of. I could barely even remember it. And all of a sudden, I remember that moment in my life that I lived. And God, guess what? It's stuck in my hip. That's why my hip was giving me so many problems. That is why I was feeling uncomfortable in that part of my body, And that's what many people, I think, underestimate. They underestimate the power of really connecting to their body's subtle energies, what I call the subtle energies, because they're everywhere in their body, right? And actually start this two-way communication with the body. Because when you start this two-way communication, again, you're going to be given information with breadcrumbs, morsels that you can take, that you can process in your own time. And then when you're ready, let them go. A little bit when you do like spring cleaning in your storage room or on your bookshelves, right? You're not expected to clear all your storage in one day. There's going to be a point when you think, you know what? I've been breathing enough dust for one day, right? I've been rummaging through so many cobwebs for one day. Enough is enough. I've done this bit. I'm really proud of it, but it feels like I've done some sort of cleansing exercise. And then tomorrow I'm going to move on to the next, or maybe the day after tomorrow, whenever I'm ready. And this is the thing. It becomes a conscious activity, but it makes you feel like you're in control. That's when it stops scaring you. Because even when people say, well, I'm hearing voices or I'm seeing faces that I don't even know who these people are. Maybe they've met them, or maybe they haven't met them, because we're multidimensional people. So there may be people that they haven't met, but they're friends of the friend of the friend. They actually met those people and they have this telepathic connection. But potentially their energy is detrimental to you. And unless you connect with the body, you're not going to know. But when you see these things, then you start sifting through and going, you know what? I don't need this. Thank you very much. I know it was there. I stored it in my body to process later on. But now that I can see it, whatever it is, let it go. Choose to consciously let it go now. And this is our inner power, really, to sort of become aware of whatever we feel is sitting out there that, we don't dare go there because God knows what it's going to do to us. Nothing is going to happen. Because again, I think to me, there is nothing more powerful than looking at ourselves with compassion and with forgiveness for the things that we haven't done, the things that we wish we would have done, or the choices we made or we didn't make, and just say, look, maybe I could have acted in a different way. Maybe I could have thought things in a different way. But I know now within myself, I have this inner knowing that I know I can think and feel different if I choose to.
Yeah. And exactly like you said, finding the lesson. What did you learn from it? And if you've learned that, okay, it's time to move on, right? Because if you don't consciously accept that or don't pay attention to that, you're going to continue in this loop of trying to figure it out and trying to figure it out and doing it a different way. And yeah, learning it, accepting it, and letting it go, moving on. Yeah. And I think that, like you had mentioned with compassion, the only thing that can come of giving ourselves compassion is good, right? It's not going to bring us backwards. It's not going to bring in the bad. It's the good. It's helping us move forward. So yeah,
It is excellent, as you were saying, and also it can make us see the past in a different way.
very different. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We see the past with different eyes. We perceive it in a different way. We see it in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when I started my change years ago, and this is how I did it with these methods, but because I was coming from a background of feeling very introvert, bullied by kids, bullied by school teachers, not really encouraged to expand my intuitive gifts that I had since I was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of closed myself up like a hedgehog, really, being very defensive as well. And also because, I always had this feeling of wanting to escape being close to people, and I never knew why. And so all of my relationships as a teenager and then later as an adult were based on me escaping. So they're all based on, rejection. And that's how I built all my friendships. That's how I built my relationship with my partner, with my fiance, with my husband, et cetera, et cetera. And when I went through my transformation in my late 30s, then I started going through what was happening in my body because I became very ill, right? It was a case of me suppressing things for years. So my body became like a pressure cooker. At some point, it just exploded and said, right, I'm basically handing over to you on a silver plate all of this suppression that you've done for 30 odd years. Now you're going to have to deal with it, whether you like it or not. And so I did. For better or worse, I dealt with it. But what I hadn't realized is that I basically misunderstood all of my interactions with everybody, because when I was a little girl, I came from a father who had been rejected by his mum and dad. He was put in boarding houses since the age of 6 or 7, and he didn't come out until the age of 18. So he hardly ever saw his parents. So he felt really rejected. My mother as well, she came from a family of, a lineage of women who also lived every day with the emotion and the feeling of rejection. So take two parents like that, they make a single daughter, yours truly. And obviously that feeling, that belief of being rejected is really what formed all of the relationships in my life. And when I became aware of this, obviously, I became so angry. I couldn't forgive myself because all of these deep feelings of, oh, what if I had captured this when I was 6, 7, 12, 13? Well, how could I have? How could you? You're very young. So unless you have someone that can lead you there, you really have to be super intuitive. You have to be an ascended master to be able to capture the kind of subtleties of the emotions and the relationships that as they happen to you. So I struggled with feelings of feeling guilty because I said I'd ruined my life, because if I had captured all of that, all of my relationships would have been different. I would have had different friends. All of my relationships with men would have been different as well. So I lived for a long time with regret and guilt, and I couldn't forgive myself. And it was only when I went through this process of self-forgiveness that I was able to forgive my parents, and before them, their parents as well, because obviously they didn't know any different, right? They didn't know any better. And that's when I started opening up to people, literally to go from being very withdrawn and protecting my energies to welcoming everybody. Well, not everybody, but welcoming people with love, with affection, and saying, hey, look, I am deserving of being loved. I am worthy of receiving love by loving and supporting people, by a loving and supporting partner. And here I am, So I think every time I say this, I really think of that song, the song from the Greatest Showman, This Is Me. I always think of the beautiful song because that song says, I'm not scared to be seen. This is me. I'm not afraid of being accepted. So forgiveness is extremely powerful. Obviously, it was painful to see things differently because you do see things differently, right? But it's very liberating. It gives you a lot of freedom. And that's why I say to everyone who's afraid of tapping into their intuitive abilities, you will only find freedom there. that liberation, a sense of feeling uplifted, because yes, you start seeing things very differently, but in a way that you haven't got those shackles holding you back now, because those shackles are that fear that is you're not knowing, or not knowing enough, or not seeing things in a different way that will give you more clarity, more focus. And especially they will give you the key to starting something different and not having that perpetual feeling of going around in circles and repeating the same loop all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And most of what this podcast is about is talking about limiting beliefs and things like that. And you just touched on a lot and made a really great point around some of the limiting beliefs that we pick up that create our life are from our parents. So all of the rejection, and we do that completely unknowingly. And a lot of those we live so much of our life with, just completely not knowing, because we're bringing them from our parents, we're inheriting them from our ancestors, and it's just completely taking control over our whole life. And I remember when I first started really realizing that as well, I pretty much had a very similar experience in the way where I felt really regretful of my entire life. I felt like that I had just wasted so much time. And it wasn't until I realized that every experience that I had in my entire life up until that moment, and continuing obviously, was something that I needed to learn. I needed to experience all of those things in order for me to get to where I am now, helping others move past that. And once I realized that, I came into such a deep sense of calm. I felt very calm. I felt very in alignment with my life. I felt like it was just an amazing gift to have realized that. And now, going back, and as I work through, of course, my own inner stuff, because we're always doing that, we're always going to be doing that, and I go back to those different times where I was really struggling in my life, I really take in the lesson from that so I can move forward and don't repeat that, kind of like I was saying earlier. So it's such a great gift to have. And a lot of people that I've met really stay in that regret. They stay in that guilt and that place of not being able to forgive themselves because they feel like they've wasted so much time. And as I'm working with them and helping them to move past that, it's such a beautiful thing to see. So yeah, beautiful.
It is really beautiful that you were able to do that. I mean, it's just fascinating just to hear your story of how you kind of overcame your limiting beliefs and the traumas really that caused those limiting beliefs in the first place, And the thing is, I also find that by doing so, it is a process that I think that is individual for everyone. One person can take a month. Another person like me can take a couple of years to go through just one thing, like the actual element of rejection, the belief of being rejected by everybody, right? Because unfortunately, so many people live with this. I mean, rejection is very unique to everyone, right? But when you meet someone and shake hands with someone, it could be a client of yours, like I used to have in the city, or it could be someone asking you a question, right? What do you think, Eliana? What do you think, Michelle? And your answer, it could be the politically correct answer, especially if you're attending a business meeting, but the energy that you project is, you're not going to like what I'm going to say anyway. Mm-hmm. Or what I say is really not that important, so I'm going to fluff around what I'm going to say. And people sense energies more than actual spoken words, right? Especially if the energy inside of you, the actual meaning of what you feel doesn't really match the words. That's why when you go to some conventions or events and you have these public speakers, you see so many people being so attentive and listening to every word that a speaker says, whereas you see other people just going through their phones, checking their social media profiles and their posts, because it's all about energy. But to me, this particular process also, what really highlighted in me was the feeling of accepting myself as I am. Mm-hmm. With all of my good qualities, with my amazingness, if I can call it that way, and also with my flaws. And that really allowed me to stop labeling myself, because there's one thing that comes up every day. And again, I say this because, you know, I was born with this kind of stressful attitude of thinking, I'm not good enough. Oh, I need to do this and I need to do that. And I need to multitask today, because I was, you know, brought up by really worrying parents. And I grew up as a worrier myself. So every time I get into this situation, and again, it takes practice, obviously, but I just say, you know, slow down. It is okay. You know, it's okay. You do this, you're not going to be able to do that. Who's going to judge you? Yeah, okay. You might have to turn around to this person and say, look, I couldn't do that. Well, are they going to bite your head off? Are they going to send you to prison? No. I mean, who are these self-appointed judge and juries? Just you,
Yeah.
right? And so I stopped sort of being so hard on myself. And this is another side effect, if you want to call it that way, of becoming more intuitive. I stopped really putting labels on myself, right? Of not being tenacious enough, of not being assertive enough, of not being clear enough in my communication, of not being sensitive enough, and all this thing. Because, you know, again, at times, yes, of course, it's important for me to listen to other people say, but not to the point that other people's opinions would obscure my personality or impact me to the point that I have to start hiding parts of me because they're not so desirable to other people, which is what I ended up doing for the first 38 years of my life, right? Before I became really ill and I began reconsidering everything. So, you know, judgment is a big thing. And I understand when people go through this dilemma of wanting to explore more their sensitivity and their intuitive powers, right? Or intuition, because also they're worried about judgment by other people, by their peers, by their family members, their spouses, co-workers. What are they going to think? You know, oh, what if I behave differently? God forbid, or am I going to be accepted? Or am I going to be rejected?
Yeah. Something that came up for me this morning too, similar to that, was things don't last forever. Like feelings like that. I feel like when people have that and they're worried about what people are thinking and they're worried about this, it's almost like that is going to be how that situation is for the rest of their life, and it's detrimental, right? And that kind of takes over and runs how they act. But really, in all reality, if somebody judges you for one thing, it's gone like in a couple of days, it's over, right? It's not impacting you anymore. And it's just the heaviness that we put on things like that, on ourselves for things like that, is just incredible. Yeah.
We are so perhaps, in a sense, quick at labeling ourselves more than labeling others. Because as you were saying, you know, I may have an opinion about someone, but I stopped thinking about them for 5 minutes because I got my own things in my life to worry about. But when it comes to ourselves, oh my goodness, we start thinking about these things, and that's it. That is the label, and it stays with us for weeks or months on end.
Mhm.
And so even forgiveness, I noticed this from personal experience and the experience of the clients that I work with, but we are so quick, well, sometimes, but we tend to forgive people more than forgiving ourselves. And I think, you know, it's not always easy, obviously, because the balance, you know, ideally should be a 50-50 balance, right? But it's not always easy to strike that balance. But it makes me wonder, why are we so quick at forgiving somebody else who maybe did something really, really bad to us, right? With kind of horrible consequences for years to come. And yet, when it comes to forgiving ourselves for not having captured a moment in a different way, or having had a perception about someone or about a situation in the past, we think, okay, this is it. I'm not good for, I'm good for nothing. You know, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of this. You know, I shouldn't even be considered for that job. I'm not good to be in a relationship with this guy. You know, they're out of my league. And the list goes on and on and on. So it is truly bizarre. I mean, our human nature sometimes strikes me, and I wonder, but to me, the element of forgiveness is really, it's really amazing, because once we explore the depths of forgiveness, there is just no end to how much we can evolve past those beliefs that we cannot change, that because someone labeled us in a certain way, they labeled us as shy or introvert or aggressive, that a day later we cannot change. Just by tweaking our words, by processing our emotions. Who is there to say that those things have to stay there forever? Yeah, okay, maybe I said something that I could have said in a different way yesterday to my friend. But you know what? I'm going to forgive myself. And I'm going to try and do better tomorrow.
Right.
And maybe with the same person, with a different interaction, or with somebody else, here we go. There goes the change. Just by saying, I'm going to forgive myself for having said that.
Yeah. And understanding that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean releasing responsibility, right? When we're forgiving other people, they can still own their responsibility for it if they want to or not. That's their choice. But when we forgive ourselves, we're also taking responsibility for it. So it's twofold there, which is really important because we understand it, we know it, we accept it, we forgive it, and we move on and we change it. So it's a really beautiful thing. Yeah. Good.
And as you were saying, when we truly forgive ourselves, right? Because there is forgiveness and forgiveness, right? Because you have the forgiveness that says, you know what, no big deal. And then off we go. We keep on repeating the same pattern. But the real forgiveness, the one that comes from the heart, where we say, I'm going to forgive myself, and tomorrow I'm going to try and do better than I did yesterday. I'm going to try to be better than I was yesterday. That's when you enable the change, right? And it's beautiful, I think.
I agree. Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
My website is www.lightfrequencies.co.uk. And also I am on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Perfect. Amazing.
I show people how to connect to their heart, how to amplify the power of the 5 senses and connect to the intuitive body, and release the fear of that not knowing, of not engaging the inner knowing, of not connecting to the inner voice, confusing messages from the mind with the messages from the heart, not knowing which one is what. But most importantly, I show them how to create a sense of calmness, a sense of focus, so that any of this kind of broadcasted messages from the mind and these signals from the body that you think, oh, what is this nagging ache? I've had it for a while now. You will see them. You will look at your fears, but in a way that they will stop impacting you. Because when you start working with the power of your heart energy, it's not that you don't feel the fear ever, but it actually stops controlling you. And that's when you really move to the space of the kind of the lower planes into the higher mental planes, which is the power of your intuition.
Beautiful. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great talk, and it was great getting to know you and meet you.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. Thank you for having me here.